Welcome to today's webinar. My name is David Nash. I am the director of the Legal One program at the Foundation for Educational Administration, which is the sister organization to the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. We are very happy to be working in coordination with the New Jersey Department of Education, Division of Field Services, and their Office of School Preparedness and Emergency Planning to give you the very latest information regarding COVID-19. At this point, I'm going to turn over to Patricia Wright, Executive Director for the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're very happy to partner with the Department of Education to present this webinar, and we hope we'll be hosting future webinars also to keep everybody informed during this crisis. I just want to take 1 minute to thank all of the New Jersey educators and all the school and district leaders for what you have done. It has been nothing short of miraculous. It has been amazing to see you set up a system of education in such a short period of time, in such unprecedented times. It is truly amazing, and congratulations to all of you for pulling together to make this happen. And I want to especially thank the Department of Education staff for the job they are doing in coordinating all of these efforts, helping to ensure that students in New Jersey can continue their education while also being well fed and safe. And so, no easy task, but the department has been extremely responsive, and they have been such a tremendous support. And we have an opportunity today to acknowledge the DOE's fearless leader, Dr. Lamont Repillette. Dr. Repillette, Lamont, I really have to just thank you on behalf of everyone for your outstanding leadership. Are you there, Lamont?
We may have a technical issue.
We may be having a slight technical issue. He says he's speaking.
So we are.
All right, I'm putting my phone up. Let's see. Can you hear?
I hear you on the phone. Can you hear me?
Can we hear him?
We are hearing something with an echo.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna try to speak. That's not working. It's echo.
Unfortunately, we're getting a lot of feedback. Let's just see if we can get our tech person to get this working. Dave, do you want to continue, and we'll have.
Sure. So if we want to just proceed to the next slide while we're working on those technical issues with the commissioner. So as we know, on March 20th, the governor did sign Executive Order 107 to help us work through the unprecedented challenges related to COVID-19. And under that executive order, all employers are required to accommodate telework or work from home for their employees wherever possible. The governor made clear that this was part of the effort to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 and to slow the transmission of the virus. The executive order made clear that where employees must be on site, it is the obligation of the employer to keep the number to the minimum number necessary to ensure that critical operations continue. So that is a key concept. The New Jersey Department of Education has been incredibly helpful at putting out guidance related to COVID-19 and has just updated that guidance as of March 23rd to provide additional clarification. We can move to our next slide. So in that guidance from March 23rd, one of the specific questions was, in the event of a school closure, are there any non-teaching personnel that may be deemed essential and required to perform certain duties? And certainly the answer is yes. There are personnel who do need to perform specific functions. When we look at the answer from the Department of Education, it makes clear it is likely that certain staff would be needed in most districts, such as the chief school administrator, to oversee and coordinate operations, the school business administrator to maintain business office operations, information technology staff to assist staff using remote access and to implement online instruction, staff involved in the preparation or delivery of food, which we will be spending most of our time addressing today, custodial and maintenance staff to provide access to district facilities and to clean and sanitize buildings as needed. So as we move to the next slide, it's important to just keep in mind some key principles. The vast majority of the essential work that we are doing in our school districts can be done remotely. Clearly, we have to provide for nutrition services for students, and it does require staff to be present for that specific purpose. And there are some other narrow purposes where it is necessary for staff to be in the building. But the vast majority of the work we're doing can be done without staff being physically present in that building, and that's critical, and that's part of the reason for the governor's executive order. For those who must come to work, it's also critical that we observe all the health and safety protocols of the CDC, New Jersey Department of Health, and all other relevant agencies. It's important for school districts to keep in mind that we also need to provide reasonable accommodations for those employees who are within our at-risk populations, including our older employees and those who have underlying medical conditions, and making sure that we provide the reasonable accommodation of allowing those individuals to work from home. New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association is in very close coordination with the Department of Education, and we do plan to release additional guidance addressing these critical issues and helping school districts think through which essential personnel actually need to be physically present in our buildings. And with that said, I will turn the presentation over to our great partners at the Department of Education.
Thanks, Dave. This is Jeff Gale talking, and I see we're closing in on 1,000 people on this call, so thank you for jumping in. I think we probably have a pretty wide range of school staff involved here. I know that we put this out through county superintendents. We probably have superintendents, principals, supervisors, school safety specialists. I think there's probably a wide gamut on the phone, and each one of you plays a unique role. So I thank you all for taking an interest and taking the time to help us to try to work through this and get this right. I would just start this off by saying that our efforts over the last 5 years have really been very much designed to assist in training up everybody in the school community, no matter what their role is, to prepare for things like this. You know, we learned a lot of lessons from Hurricane Sandy, and we put a lot of effort into our training to the schools on your school safety and security plans, continuity of operations planning. We've partnered across a whole number of different agencies, and most of you have been exposed to that, which is a good thing. And you know, the intent with the School Safety Specialist Academy and the work that we've done there is to help position you to develop those community partnerships and to learn to work together. And I think that's all really starting to show some very good dividends right now. So thank you for all of that. Just to talk about a couple things that we're trying to do right now. One of the first things that came out of the potential for closing our schools through the governor's office was the importance of making sure that the children all get their meals as they have typically been provided meals during instruction. And the challenge, obviously, that we all face is we've never instructed long-term while no physical building is open. And so serving those meals has become a little bit of a challenge and a new thing for us to confront. So we're going to spend some time talking about that. We spent quite a bit of time trying to facilitate the distribution of those meals during this closure time. In addition, one of the things that cropped up was a recognition that a lot of meals were going unserved. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we might be able to navigate that. But on the back end of this, one other thing that the department through my office has been involved in is trying to facilitate the collection of the unserved meals to get them to local food banks. On top of that, we have been trying to identify, and some of you are aware of this, there was some guidance that went out yesterday and a request to identify and collect school stores of personal protective equipment.
We didn't have on here. Audio.
I'm sorry?
Hello? Oh, I'm sorry. You guys can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, thank you very much. I apologize for the technical delay. However, the Department of Education, when it comes to technology, we're clearly lagging behind districts, so I apologize for that. I just want to just interrupt real quick because I have to jump on another call, but I wanted to just thank everyone, especially Pat and David, for really coming together and really asking to partner with the Department of Education on some of the things that we're doing in regards to COVID-19. I can honestly say this has been a total team effort. But I also want to thank the leaders that you have on here for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule to participate in this conversation with our school preparedness teams. We know that everyone on this call, from the school leaders to my own department, have been working around the clock to provide every possible opportunity to ensure continuity of critical school services for all New Jersey students. So thank you. A key part of that effort has been, I can honestly say, the field services, just day in and day out effort to respond in real time. We talk about having boots on the ground. It's part of our moniker and our reputation, I think, over the last couple of years to kind of be available. We talked about being adaptive, responsive, and progressive in our thought. So to a broad range of issues that districts encounter, from conducting site visits to ensuring that food is being distributed safely, to visiting schools to provide individual assistance regarding personnel that may be allowed in the building, to surveying every district's access to internet, tablets, and other internet connected devices to ensure remote instruction. Our field service team, led by our Assistant Commissioner Hassan, continue to lead a boots on the ground response to all coronavirus issues. One important step early in this outbreak was the integration between the emergency management expertise from the ROC and OEM to the Department of Education. And you can honestly say that's totally different when brought upon this idea of using state resources to collaborate. I really couldn't imagine how really connecting with OEM and the individual resource at the ROC to kind of service our district, but listening to our Colonel Callahan oversee the state police and really seeing exactly that their job is to be able to be assistance to individuals within that county and within the area. So now I understand through a systemic coordination through the ROC to local OEM, it's key to our ability to support our districts in real time. Their diligent work has been invaluable to the department's coronavirus response efforts. So I want to give a shout out to Colonel Callahan and his team at the ROC for the great work they've been doing, and also to all the county and state OEM, and it's more particularly the local OEM, for really just collaborating us in real time. As I stated before, I'm about to get off this call, but I really cannot thank you enough for really truly embracing this new paradigm, right? Really looking at how can we provide quality instruction, continuous instruction of quality, and also provide basic needs to our students, whether it's food security, whether it's transportation. In a time like this, it's almost like we're chasing a storm where we think we're ahead of it, but we're not. So I want to thank you very much for your dedication and commitment. And Pat, thank you for putting this together, and David for facilitating this. And thank you very much. As I stated before, the Department of Education is always willing to support individuals out there that is doing the right thing for our students. Thank you, and have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we'll jump back into these couple initiatives that we've undertaken through my office, and then we'll kind of get into some of what we're seeing. So I was in the middle of the conversation about the personal protective equipment. We know that as a result of Ebola, as a result of H1N1, we had schools that came to our recognition had been in possession of protective equipment that is currently not being utilized. And I'm thinking we're all aware of the fact that statewide, well, nationwide really, but statewide, we're running into a dearth of the protective equipment that's needed in our medical facilities. And so we started working about a week ago on trying to get a collection process together. We got a little bit of a snag with that, but yesterday we managed to get a questionnaire or survey out as to what types of equipment was out there, and a means of sorting that out with the document that survey feeds, so that we can start to see what is where. I know that there are some districts and some counties that started working on this, but for the point of recognition, we were trying to do this at a state level because the state need may exceed local needs in some cases. So the idea is that if we can get some of this equipment collected and distributed back up to the state level, we can make sure that those pieces of equipment get to the most critical areas in the state to prevent this spread and to keep our medical professionals safe. And then one of our last things is we've been in the process of identifying school facilities that are not currently being used due to lack of enrollment or some other reason such as that, not because they were condemned or uninhabitable, because we are finding that there's a need for testing sites, there's a potential need for bed sites and so forth. So we're trying to identify some facilities that might be able to be temporarily used should the need arise. So right now, those are some of the big initiatives that have been taking up all the time in my office. You know that we're thin, but we run pretty quickly. And so anything that any of you have to add to that at the end of this, we'll give you if you don't already have it, a contact point so that we can get some feedback, and so that anybody that has anything they want to volunteer has that opportunity. So I'd ask you to participate in those things as you see them coming forward. It's very critical to our efforts. And I thank everybody who's already started on that path. You can hit the next slide. Okay, just to understand what was put in place when I was tasked with ensuring that the mechanism was in place to make sure that schools were getting the meals out to the students. This kind of got, for whatever reason, this thing gets converted and it gets a little convoluted, but we put into place, I spoke extensively with Colonel Callahan from the state police, and we put a practice in place. The commissioner referenced the ROC, the Regional Operations Information Center, and post 9/11 and very much in use during Hurricane Sandy and in use right now is a system where all of the agencies have a seat up at division headquarters with the New Jersey State Police. And the intent of this whole system is to focus the efforts and the resources in the most needed areas, initiating with a request from down at the local level, coming up through the municipal coordinators and through the county coordinators and into the ROC, or through the respective agencies from the ground level up. So we use that model to try to make sure that we had support for the meal distributions across the state. So the intended flow of information you see here to the field from the commissioner's office has been determined to have initiated with Commissioner Repillette through Assistant Commissioner Hassan directly to myself, at which point I would reach out to a county superintendent and also to a county OEM coordinator. And then respectively, those would coordinate with one another and also with their district superintendents and their municipal OEM coordinators. As a result of that, I can give you a good example. We had up in a school in Union County, where we had a school district that was not going to be able to feed its students until yesterday. This came to my attention on Monday of last week. And through this chain, I was able to contact the local county OEM coordinator. Their issue was that they did not have enough hands to distribute food at their sites. And as a result of the outreach, they were able to, the next day, they were able to get people on site through the use of those municipal resources to be able to help distribute the food at the local level. So we jump-started their food distribution by about 6 days. And that's kind of how this is designed to work. Problems that come back from the field, a district superintendent working with a municipal OEM coordinator, should they be exhausted in their resources or they have a need that can't be met, are to push that request up to the county OEM coordinators and their respective county superintendents, both of whom would report directly to me, and then I would report those to Assistant Commissioner Hassan and to Commissioner Repillette. At the same time, understanding that we have a seat at the Regional Information Center, and we would be requesting those resources or assistance through that. So we really do have a very good network. It's proven to work very well. Running outside of that framework makes it very difficult to make sure that we get the right things to the right people. So please use that model. Please make sure that at the lowest levels, you're connecting with your OEM coordinators municipally so that they can help you with such situations such as crossing incidents at our distribution sites, transportation issues, and so forth. That's the whole design of this, this system. Next. Okay, some things to consider. So we got a picture of one of our distribution sites. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've been seeing, some considerations that need to be, they need to be tailored kind of to your individual district and your individual needs. That was the idea of pushing this down to the local level. Initially, what was pushed down was a model plan to approximate for schools for a distribution system, and also some guiding principles. So we're going to talk about a few of those things within the context of this presentation next. So communication, this seems to be one of the big ones, and probably we're starting to get a better handle on this, but making sure that all of our eligible community members are aware of the pickup sites, dates, and hours of distribution, obviously is the first step to making sure people get there. So what we really should be doing is leveraging our existing mechanisms for communicating with our, if we were to communicate a snow day or whatever the case might be, we kind of have this in place. We don't want to stray too far from what people are used to, but we do want to talk about redundancy. So, our robocall or similar methods, our social media options that we can exercise to get messages out on social media. If we're using email, and above all, and this was a big problem in Philadelphia last week, we want to make sure that we message with regard to the understanding that not everyone speaks English. Apparently, Philadelphia put out 30,000 meals last Monday, and they did not message the Spanish-speaking community very well, and only 8,000 of those meals were picked up. So we want to make sure that the message gets out there, and that we're considering people with an issue in communicating that we would normally not think about, right? If we've got hearing impaired, if we have people with different languages and language skills, we want to make sure that the message gets to all of them. Next. Just something that was pointed out to me by the Ag Department. One of the things that we saw in the field was that people were requiring individuals to sign for their meals. I contacted the Ag Department, and just for the purpose of understanding, if your meal program is run through their food and nutrition program, individual signatures are not required. What is required is that a total count of meals served to the proper population is what they reimburse for. So keeping a total count is critical, but having individuals sign for their meals is not something that we should be doing. Any other requests for particular information, and there are a lot of nuances to this that I fail to understand, should go through the Department of Agriculture to determine if we're meeting their guidelines. Next. Okay, so another big concern, the healthcare, the health situation with regard to our individuals preparing our food. We want to make sure that we adhere to all of the recommended guidelines from the USDA. We want to make sure that we have healthy people serving meals, right? So please remind your food preparation teams and your distribution teams that if they feel sick or if they have any symptoms, they should be notifying a supervisor, and they should be staying home. They should not be preparing meals if there's the potential that they are ill. Next. One of the things that we've seen school districts implement, and again, you want to consult your legal teams in how you do this, but there are school districts that are using a screening method by asking questions. Do you feel ill? Have you developed a cough? Are you experiencing any shortness of breath? If the answer to any of them is yes, the individual districts that are using this method, this process, are sending those individuals home. If the answer to those questions is no, they will allow them to prepare and distribute meals. Some of them are actually using the temporal scan thermometer after answering no to those questions, just to ensure that they don't have a fever. From there, we want to make sure that they follow safe food prep and handling practices. And in that, we might be wise to consider the personal protective equipment, masks and gloves and so forth, so that we're not potentially contaminating the food or spreading contamination from the community back into our food handling staff. Next. So on site, we've got a couple different ways that we can prepare and hand out our meals, right? So if we do it on site, we are talking about using some of our school facilities to conduct this transaction. If we're going to do that, there are some things we should be aware of. One, and most schools are doing this, they have some law enforcement presence at the site just to ensure that everything remains calm and orderly and safe and secure. We want to make sure that if we have people coming to and from the building, that we have traffic concerns addressed. What is the flow of traffic on our campus, coming and going, up to the pickup site and away from the pickup site? Are we assisting pedestrians at the crossings? The last thing we would want is for a student to be attempting to get a meal and have an issue crossing traffic. So we want to expedite the ingress and the egress. We want to keep the crossing safe, and we want to have general security on those sites. Most of our schools are doing a pretty good job with that from what we've seen in the field. Next. Tom wanted to make sure everybody knew what a crossing guard looked like, so we have this slide. Next. Okay, similar issues on the on-site distribution. We want to make sure that we are approximating the Department of Agriculture summer feeding program, which means we're looking at a grab-and-go setup. We are not conducting any aggregate or congregate feeding, okay? We don't want to be feeding people in groups. They should be taking meals away with them. Some of what we've seen, and we've visited dozens of districts at this point. My team, we've had about 4 people on any given day out in the field, going from district to district, just observing and coming away with some takeaways, things that are being done well, some things that we might need to brush up on. But what we're looking at is a grab and go setup, and there are some ways to do this that are better than others. We know that the virus in the air in the form of droplets can persist for about an hour. So think about dispersal and think about what that does if we're feeding inside versus outside. If we're bringing people into vestibules to gather to grab their meals and leave, then we are facilitating potentially that spread, whereas outdoors, that's a lot less likely. So the outdoor locations are preferable. They minimize our proximity to one another and to any virus. They facilitate the dissipation and dispersal of the aerosol droplets. And if we have weather considerations that are a problem, then we should think about using overhangs and awnings and so forth, rather than bringing people into our buildings. The next thing that we really want to pay attention to is that we're using a no contact process wherever we possibly can. Some of the best ways that we've seen this done involve keeping the meals on a table near the building and a separate table out by the traffic lane or the pedestrian traffic lane that is empty. And what we have seen as a very effective means of minimizing the potential for spread is that an individual steps up to a mark or pulls up to a mark approximately 15 feet from that table. They step out of the vehicle, they announce what they're there for. We have to worry about making sure that we don't give a food that has an allergen to a student who has an allergy, right? So just making sure that we know how many meals that individual is picking up and potentially if there's an issue with an allergen. They remain at that post, and someone walks a meal out to the table from the school building, places it on the table, and returns to the building before that meal gets retrieved by the receiver. In that way, we don't have any closer than 6 feet between those individuals, and they're not coming into contact. Schools that are using this process are wiping that table down every half a dozen transactions, and they're changing their protective gear. If you can manage to do that, just to make sure that we stay clean and everything stays stays orderly. And again, just remembering that we have to watch for food allergies when we're placing or distributing our meals. Next. Off-site distribution. So we've got a couple different ways that this is being handled. If we have to move our meals to off-site locations because we cannot afford the ability, or we're so dispersed that people can't walk up to the building in all cases, what we're seeing are some districts transporting the meals to bus stops. They make the regular bus route, they pull up to the bus stop, and they distribute the meals at the stop. Some of the impediments that we've seen, I know that there are some, we're going to talk a little bit about a piece of legislation that right now is kind of being debated how we adhere to this, but is there a parent present at that stop to pick up the meal? The timeliness of the bus routes has become an issue in some instances. Either the buses, because they're not dropping off or picking up students, are running a little bit ahead of schedule, or, and a lot of complaints have come from this, the kids that are supposed to be coming out to get their meals are oversleeping. And so the bus comes and goes without delivering the meals. The ways that I've seen some schools overcome this is that they take a meal, they drop it at the door, they knock, and they return to the bus to avoid contact. And in all these cases, what we always want to push out to our delivery crew, if you want to call it that, is the situational awareness of those stops. They need to be safe for themselves while they're doing it, both as far as the potential spread for the virus, but also making sure that they're stopping in safe locations and making sure that their own safety and security is being accounted for. The other method to distribute offsite would be to transport to established sites. Local pantries, soup kitchens, houses of worship, municipally owned sites such as recreation facilities, municipal lots, and so forth. And again, if we're going to do this, we need to be concerned about security and access, making sure that those things are safe at each of these sites. So, we may be basically following offsite a similar process to on-site. It might be that we go to a municipal facility that's centrally located, and then we set up a distribution system, much like the one we just described for on-site at the school. But in either case, we want those same safety considerations for our workers, for the food, and for the people coming to access those sites to be looked after. Next. This is an example that was put out by a district down in South Jersey. They pushed this overview of their school drop-off or their pickup site out to the community that was receiving meals, and you can see that this is what they the process that I just described is what they adhere to. The two white blocks, the rectangles off to the side, are the two meal pickup tables. The food is kept at a table up near the building, and you can see where the traffic comes in. The red arrow indicates where they stop. The meal gets placed on the table, and then they depart following that system of arrows with some reminders. Be patient, follow directions, and no contact. Next. This is a picture of that site on the ground. It might be a little bit difficult to see, but up by that second white sign along the curb is where the two tables are set, and up at the building is where the food is kept. Next. Other things that we've seen are you pull up with a vehicle if you're having vehicle pickup, and the driver simply opens the trunk and the meal gets placed in the trunk and the vehicle proceeds without any contact. What we don't want is people leaning into vehicles, potentially transmitting things back and forth. Next. Another great idea, and I know we saw this up in Newark on an outdoor. This is just the best picture that we could find. But what we've seen is a total lack of any type of distancing. Okay, we've got people standing in line and they're shoulder to shoulder, waiting in line for the meals. We had this issue with some pickups that were taking place down in Ocean County last week with regard to instructional material and laptops and so forth. They ended up having to shut down the site and deliver those materials door to door because people would not stay apart. Think about putting some marks on the ground. In Newark, we saw chalk boxes drawn every 6 feet, and everybody was to stand in a box until the one in front of them was vacated, and then they stepped forward one box. This picture depicts people standing at taped intervals, standing with their toes on the tape and waiting for the person ahead of them to move, and then you advance to the next. If we're going to put people in proximity and they're going to line up for meals, we want to make sure that we keep them apart. And it's very difficult for people to resist that urge to mingle. So we can give them some visual cues, and that might help out. Next. And I was just informed via text from a school administrator that the word practice was spelled wrong. So I apologize for that. Observations that we're seeing out in the field, putting all of the meals on one table. Okay. We have to be careful about this. If we're going to put all 150 meals on a table and we're going to allow people to walk up and grab a meal, is the possibility there that somebody sneezes on the table and now we've got a bunch of contaminated bags? Is there the potential that somebody grabs a bag that has an allergen in it? These are some things that we really need to be concerned about. So distributing the food on the tables, as we discussed, is a great way to avoid that, one meal at a time. Distributing them indoors risks not just the contamination of individuals with the potential spread of the virus, but also contamination of the building. Bringing the visitors into the building negates that social distancing that we've been talking about. Requiring signatures that are unnecessary causes delays. It also causes us to share materials. We were watching a couple different schools where the clipboard and the pen were being passed back and forth so that people could sign for meals. Obviously not really a good way to prevent keeping our hands clean and keeping away from a potential virus. The social distancing that we just talked about in lines and so forth is not being adhered to. And then one of the big ones is the excessive meals that we're finding. Probably most of you that have been engaged in preparing and distributing meals are finding that a lot of them are going uncollected. I think this could potentially become a problem down the road if we use up our food stores now. People are, as this thing continues, if it continues, are going to become more and more dependent on the food that's being handed out at the schools, and you'll probably see a greater and greater participation in your food programs. And if we're making all this food and giving it away in the beginning, that's really going to hurt us on the backside of this. So that food waste should be minimized, but we want to make sure that if it exists, that we get it into the hands of somebody that can use it. So we'll talk about that food pantry process a little bit later. Next. The unserved food, the unserved meals. So I think I've been hearing the term shelf-stable food quite a bit. People in the food prep side of this equation are telling me that if you adhere to the guidelines set by the Ag Department as to what a meal that's acceptable to serve to a student is, the protein requirement almost negates the possibility for that food to be quote unquote shelf stable. The proteins typically, because we can't use nuts, are in the form of dairy or some type of meat product. And so we want to make very sure that we're trying to keep a handle on what we're preparing and what we're putting out, because shelf stable might not be as easy to make happen as it sounds. Our messaging to reduce these unserved meals is very, very important. And we talked about the language options. We talked about using messaging systems that everyone's familiar with and making sure that everybody that's afforded the opportunity for a meal actually knows about it, the timing and the location. Preparing only the food that we need, and then those donations, which we're setting. You'll see something in an email, hopefully in the next 24 hours, to help you make those connections. Remember this about the unserved meals. And again, I called the Ag Department to be sure that everyone out there would understand this, depending on which the answer was that I received. Only the meals that are served to students will you be reimbursed for. Any meals that you're required or forced to donate on the backside because you can't use them will not be reimbursed for. So be careful that you don't prepare 1,000 meals, hand out 100 and give 500 away to non-eligible students. You will be paying for those meals. You won't be reimbursed for them according to the Ag Department. Next. So what we're looking for with the collaboration on the PPE equipment. If you haven't visited, the link is right there at the bottom as far as where our Survey Monkey is. And again, that feeds a database. You'll be asked to input generally what you have on that you're willing to donate. Okay, nobody is demanding anything from you. This is a request to help our first responder and medical community. What you have that you can reasonably part with is what we're looking for. Those numbers by topic or by surgical glove, surgical mask, protective face shields, and so forth, all have drop downs. So if you can approximate what it is you have that you're willing to and can part with, the idea is to put that information in. We're working on, with the county executives, trying to come up with some common collection sites so that we're not going to every school in the state. It may well be that after speaking to Colonel Callahan with the state police, that the National Guard may be leveraged to come out and help collect these materials. There's a lot of it out there. We've already had a very good response just overnight in our requests. And again, I know there are some counties that have already gone down this road to some extent, but we are trying to make sure that those resources don't get hung up at a county level that doesn't need them when maybe we've got a wider state need. And that's why we're headed in this direction. So please look for that email, take down that link while you have a minute. In case you haven't gotten that email, reach out to us if you need more information. We'll give you that email address at the end. Next. Okay, briefly, I'm going to touch on this because this is something that came to our attention just recently, although it apparently has existed for a week or more. Assembly Bill 3840. This bill, as written, requires school districts to do a few things with regard to meal distribution. Right now, what we're seeing are some schools that are preparing meals on a daily basis. Some districts are preparing meals every other day and picking up every other day. Some schools are doing this for a week. I know one district that's talking about 2 weeks of meal prep and handout once every 2 weeks. This legislation talks about no more than 3 days. This has apparently been passed. I can't get into any great detail because there's a lot of debate about the meaning of some of this, but I think it should be on your radar. Look through it, see how it might affect you. If this is in full force as written, it may be that there are some things that get adjusted or revised that is being discussed at another level that I'm not smart enough to understand nor qualified to talk about. But making sure that on the backside of this, any students that we can't get a meal to be provided with a meal voucher that will afford them the ability to take that voucher to a local food source and actually get a meal elsewhere. So hopefully there'll be more guidance coming to you on this. I don't envision this is going to be the last time we do a conference like this. I think we're going to need a couple more in the next couple weeks. So more to come on that, but take that bill number down, become familiar with it, and we're going to try to help sort that out and get you better information going forward. Next. Okay, so the concept of crisis counseling. There are a couple other things that we need to be concerned about, just aside from educating the kids off-site and feeding them off-site. You should consider within your district having some designated number so that people can call into the school because they're feeling stress or anxiety. That could go to the concept of being away from their learning base and feeling uncomfortable learning outside the school environment. It could have to do with general safety issues or concerns. It could have to do with the concept that they're being fed elsewhere. So try to remember that that's something you should be thinking of addressing. You probably already are starting to get calls on this stuff. Consider utilizing your guidance counselors and social workers, your school psychologists and so forth to help you think of a way to address this and to field those concerns as they come in. Next. This one might look familiar to you, Dave, because I think I stole this off your slideshow from the other day. Your school counselor, your SAC, your school psychologist, looking at protocols for risk assessments, how to talk about the coronavirus and COVID-19. There are a couple, and I know, Dave, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you have some links that are going to be accessible to people that participated in this call.
Yes, we do make available the PowerPoint.
Right.
Those links.
So just take a look at some of these for the sake of understanding how to talk to kids about the coronavirus, how to talk to them and help them cope with stress during this time and so forth. There'll be some resources that you'll be afforded access to after this presentation is over. I think it's important for us to recognize that not everybody can get through something like this without a lot of stress and anxiety. So we want to make sure we take care of those things somewhere along the way. Next. Also, another slide stolen from you, Dave, the potential for stigma related to COVID-19. We've got a couple different issues actually with regard to stigma. It may be part of the reason that we're not seeing the great turnout for the school meals. Some of you have districts where every student in the district is eligible for a free or reduced meal. They are probably more apt to show up and retrieve their meal from the school because there's no stigma attached to that. But standing in line for a free meal in other districts might be something that people are highly sensitive to and are reluctant to come pick up their meal. In concert with that, the idea that we can discriminate by associating certain people with an infectious disease, associating that with a population or a nationality, obviously is a very broad generalization. Just because someone may have come here and their family was originally from China and they've been here for 20 years does not mean that because they have those characteristics and traits that they automatically are somebody suspected of having the coronavirus, right? So we want to make sure that we are looking at these other communities and making sure that we don't attach a stigma to them based on how they look or based on what they believe. those things can actually start to cause problems in our community. And especially if we return to school, we really want to be on top of that. So just something to be aware of. Next. The USDA has a site, and there's a link, and again, we'll make sure that you get these links, but this site has answers to some frequently asked questions on food safety from the U.S. Ag Department with regard to coronavirus. Next. This is a page from the Department of Ed. Again, we'll make sure that you get access to these resources, but I thought it was important to throw a screenshot in. There are some hotlines for general questions, clinical questions, COVID testing, and so forth. We also have resources on from Human Services, from Children and Families, from the Department of Education, from Register Ready, talking about emergency preparation, how to deal with the hotlines for children, hotlines for adults, Medicaid information, and then community resources, the NJ Council on Developmental Disabilities for COVID-19 resources, Disability Rights New Jersey. We've got a lot of people that struggle we want to make sure that we have an even playing field for everyone while they're in the school community. And now we are not able to bring them to our facility and meet those needs. We need to be just as sensitive of their differences and their special needs as we move forward through this remote learning and feeding. So we're going to get you some information from Autism New Jersey and the Mental Health Association and so forth to make sure that you have everything that we could possibly provide you to make sure that you have something to look to guide you through that. Next. We're almost done, I promise you. The drilling requirements. I'm getting a lot of questions about the drilling requirements. Here's what I can tell you. I don't have the authority to tell you not to do your drills or that it doesn't matter if you didn't. But I do recognize from my position that if you hadn't done a drill in the first 2 weeks of March, and we close down after the first 2 weeks in March, you're not going to have drills done during the month of March. Every month we're supposed to have a fire drill and a school security drill. So what we're looking at right now is I'm trying to go up the chain, and there is a process for a rule relaxation proposal that can be pushed up. Some of you out there might know more about that than I do, but I did talk to DCA yesterday about the fire drills, and they're looking at a similar application to get a relaxation of some of these rules. Right now, I mean, it seems common sense that if you haven't done your drills, then it didn't happen. But we do have to give a statement of assurance, and we want to make sure that it doesn't appear as though we're being disingenuous when we hand them in at the end of the year. The other concern is that, let's just say we come back to school in the third week of April. That leaves you a week. Are we going to spend that week drilling and putting people back in corners and close proximity? Might not be the best idea. So we're going to get you more guidance on that as this unfolds. But right now, I think it's fair for us to start making a request for a relaxation of some of those regulations until we get through this. So hopefully that helps some of you out there with this concern. Next. Again, the next couple pages are going to be resource links that we want to make sure that we give you access to. These are all live links that obviously you can't access right now. We're going to make sure that we get them up on the PSA website, and that you all have an opportunity to run through these things and see what meets your needs. Next. A couple more, exactly the same comments I would make about the last slide. Give you a quick second if you need it. So moving forward, that's fine. Moving forward, we're pretty much done. I really appreciate everybody listening to me drone for the last almost hour. Please, any questions that you have, there's the email address for our site within OSPEP. They will come directly to me, and we will filter them out through my team to make sure that we get answers to your questions. Also, I would ask you, all the things that we've talked about, all the things that we're working on, all the things that we're doing together, if you see pitfalls, if you see best practices, if you've come up with something innovative that overcomes some of these things that the rest of us might be struggling with, please share them with this through this email as well. Our whole goal with this is to continue to learn and get better. We've learned quite a bit after Hurricane Sandy. We made sure that we did everything that we could to get that information out so that we didn't get caught in a similar circumstance after the hurricane. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen to us again. Everything that we learn, everything that we can hone, everything we can get better at, it takes all of us to do this. My office has learned just as much from you all out in the field as you have from us, maybe more. So please let us know if there's something that you think will benefit the rest of the state. Outside of that, I don't have anything else. I don't think there's another slide. Maybe there is. Might just say thank you.
So with that, let me also thank everybody for being such wonderful partners. We appreciate the great work the Department of Education is doing and the incredible work that's happening in the field and all of the commitment that we have to serving our children. So thank you so much for partnering with us on this incredible work.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody out there. I know this is tough. We've been working around the clock in my office for the last 2 weeks. I don't think we've stopped, and I'm sure none of you have either. So thanks for everything you're doing out there. Please stay in touch and let us know if there's something we can be doing better. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Round of applause.